This is going to be rather short in respect of our NCCC folks. We want to welcome all the NCCC people that we don't know and haven't seen forever and a day. Glad to see you guys. Make some, hello Rick, glad to make some news to Tom. Ed, a bunch of folks we just don't hardly ever get to see. And Dennis, you need to come around more, buddy. Who was telling me they wanted an application but didn't have one? Was that you, Dennis? Okay, good. We'll get you one. Very good. Should we just do introductions real quick? Let's start down there with Mr. Jerry. Jerry Olive, you call sign? K3EST. Okay. Here, hang on. Let's do this. Let's do this here. Again, sir. Call sign.
This is Jerry. I'm KD6WKY, and I live in Vacaville.
Dave, K6TQ, Folsom.
Bob, W1RH, Placerville.
Rick, W6SR, El Dorado Hills.
Rick, N6RK, Galt. I'm a member of both clubs.
Sue, K6SZQ, Fiddletown.
I'm Steve, NC6R, married to this lovely young lady, also from Fiddletown.
Rich, W6H in Burson.
Whiskey Uniform 6 X-Ray, Dennis in Auburn.
Skip, N6NFB in Galt, sort of.
Ed, AJ6V, Los Altos Hills.
Tom, NS6T in Livermore.
Bob, KA9MDP, Sutter Creek.
Chris, N6WM, Livermore.
Rick, N6XI, Truckee and Saratoga, both clubs.
Bob, K3EST, Davis. And Hugo, Davis.
Roberto, K6KM, Livermore.
Who just came in?
KK6PXT, Danville, Greg.
Gary, NA60 from Livermore, member of both clubs. And online we have Jim, K9YC, and Rick, NK7I at the moment.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Good to have you. Motherlode, old business. We had none hanging out that I could think of. We had taken care of everything pretty well. A couple things. First of all, the quarterly treasury report will be due in the July nugget, and so we've gone to quarterly for basically for housekeeping purposes. We'll be here as well. We need to approve our secretary's report that was in the May newsletter. Anybody read the nugget? Come on, folks, it's really good. There you go. Can we get an approval? Somebody? Bob. W1RH. Dave? N6TQ? Seconds. All in favor? All right. Opposed? All right. Thank you, Motherlode people and others. We also got an email. We need to approve the ARRL Reedy Roundup plaque for next year that Motherlode sponsors. It's $107, and that includes shipping, continental U.S. shipping, not overseas. And we've sponsored this Reedy Roundup plaque for quite a number of years. I would move that we continue to do so. How's the membership feel about that? Sounds good? All night you had? Okay. Bob, you want to make a motion we do that? You're all, sir? There you go. Did you get that? Mike Delta Papa. Second to that? Somebody? W1RH. Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you. Motion carries. Also, too, I somehow got wrangled into IDXC Visalia 2027. It is going, it's a real concern. It's going, they've got new blood, new people, new vendors, new location. They're back at the Holiday Inn. It's been totally revamped. The rooms will become available here I believe right after the first of the year. One of the things that they are struggling with is the cost of the lanyard and the name badge. Nobody was willing to step up and do that. I would like to offer up that Motherlode donate $200 toward that cost. I don't have a final cost, but I think it was in the neighborhood of like $600 for all the lanyards and name badges, as opposed to a Sharpie. I was opposed to that. We need to keep this thing professional. You want people to come, you want vendors to come, we need to know that look like what we're doing. So I would recommend, and I can't make my own motion again, but I'd recommend that Motherlode donate $200 toward the purchase of name badges and lanyards. How do we feel? Rick? The lanyard and the name badge for IDXC 2027. You good with that, Rick? W6SR moves. A second to that? Rich Cutler, WC 68 seconds. All in favor? Aye? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. I will tell the folks that Motherlode will donate $200 toward that. I felt that was very important. You guys pay to go in to a seminar. You need to have a name badge so people know who you are. That was the last new business I had. Anybody got anything else hanging out in new business? No? Okay. Member achievements. What have you guys been doing? I hear a lot of activity on the air. You logged any new ones? Any new states on a new band? New zone? Bob, I know you've been on. What are you doing? Yeah, yes, you were. I'm sorry, you doing what now?
I have not worked Europe on 6 meters since I lived in Boston, and I worked for Germans and Ireland here a couple days ago.
Hey, 6 meters, yeah. I worked a bunch of Puerto Ricos, St. Thomas, St. Vincent, and some Japans. What'd you do, Bob? Well, yeah, Hawaii. How many Hawaiis you need? I got a bunch of them on 6. 6 has been very, very active. If somebody please get Delaware and Rhode Island on the air, I'd have my last 2 states. So they've come in and gone away. Who else is doing stuff? What's happening? Any HF stuff? Anybody got any new summits, new parks, new? It all counts towards our yearly total. That's right, Skip. I was waiting for you to answer that. DX Marathon, our marathon total. Our club has done pretty well. One year we were number 4 in the world. We slipped a little bit in marathon contacts. So, and by the way, Rick, NK6I, there you are. 7I, sorry. Rick, I saw you work what was it the other night? Hello, Rick. He's away. Turkmenistan? Was it?
Maybe. I don't. It wasn't solid. It was a really lousy copy.
Yeah, you worked Turkmenistan the other night. I could hear him. I got walked on, and then he went away. That would have been new and rare. Somebody said it doesn't count right now for a DXCC, but you know what? I'm going to work them first. Worry about it later.
Exactly. And if it doesn't prove out, I haven't lost anything.
Yeah, work them first.
Yeah, Gary, the feed from Rick is a lot hotter than the feed from the meeting.
Yeah, Gary's got it under control.
It's a little thin here, too. You could use some more audio.
I have no idea how to adjust one person's level.
Well, I'm not terribly soft.
Yeah, I think if you feed the network better than you are now, we'd be better off.
So let us know what you're doing. Jeff will get you in the newsletter. This is really important, guys, because a lot of folks read the newsletter. And I remember when I was first starting with Motherlode, I would read what other folks have been doing, and it was a great source of encouragement. And then I would know who to go back to and who to ask questions to. People like SR, people like Rich, people who'd been there and done it. And it was a great source of knowledge. Okay, also too, locally in the Amador, Calaveras County area, there's a gentleman with a 41-foot man lift, and I don't know how far out in the valley he will go. I've heard he goes out towards Lodi and Galt. His rates are reasonable. If you need some antenna work done, he's got a 41-foot man lift. Rich, you want to speak about that?
I would rent one at Home Depot instead of taking the antenna off the tower like I normally do. It's just easier to go up, and it would cost me $500 every time. I rented the lift, a sister lift. They took it was wrong, cost me $300, didn't reach, wouldn't give me my money back. So this guy did the whole thing for $200. Came over, I went up, fixed it, he took off. It's perfect. So I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, and likewise, I had him do some work on mine, reroute some coax on top. Very competent, very reasonable. Also, as a reminder, if you guys are not using ClubLog, if Motherlode members are not using ClubLog, get a hold of me. We'll get you on ClubLog. It's a great tool, not just for competitiveness amongst the members, but for checking what you've got worked, what's outstanding. I found one the other day where I had worked a guy on 20 meters and not got credit for it. So I went back to him and said, oh yeah, my bad. So I got another slot filled in. Real quick, like upcoming contests right now, ARRL VHF contest. In fact, it's going on now. One that Skip brought up to my mind, the SMRC contest, the 6-meter contest is on the 20th. Stu Perry. West Virginia QSO party. If you want to work an unusual state, it's hard to get sometimes. ARRL Kids Day. Field Day, one of the big ones, 27th. Worldwide VHF sideband contest on July 5th. One that I know is dear to Jeff's heart is the North American Radio QSO party on the 18th of July. Alabama QSO party on the 25th. So there's activity out there. Not as much as wintertime, but there is stuff. And real quick, I'll go over upcoming DXpeditions for those of you who are like I, who like to work the contest and work the DX as well. Ogasawara. Get Ogasawara. It's not always on anymore. Ever since the Japanese pulled out of it as a manned entity, it is on sporadically. Get Oscar. Cape Verde Island, Palau, Armenia, Easter Island, St. Pierre and Miquelon, Crete, Benin, South Cook, a lot of jabbering talk about that in South Cook, Azerbaijan. Those are all upcoming between now and the next Motherlode Club meeting. Slated for, oh, hang on here, too many pages. Sorry. Our next meeting is, I left it off. Our next meeting is July 25th of July. And we have not picked a location yet. All these contests and all these DXpeditions are available on the website. They're always listed at the bottom of the nugget. The DX is the November Golf 3 kilowatt for DX. And of course, contest club, or excuse me, contest calendar. Contest. That's about all I have for now. Anybody else hang for the good? We tried to keep this short today. Nothing. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Rick, Whiskey Charlie 6 Hotel motions. Is there a second to that? Sue, K3EST. All in favor? All right. Motherlode meeting is adjourned at Skip at 12:21. Thank you, Gary.
Okay, today is June 13th, and this is the NCCC meeting. We have 2 new members to vote. Both came from my LARC Discord. One is Aaron Anderer, N6ACA, He's an extra license class. He's very active, sponsored by Don, W2 Don, myself, K6KM, and Gary, and A60, QTH in Livermore. He has an FTDX10, bunch of QRP radios, and monoband and fan dipoles. He is 0.1% CW. He tried to learn it this year, but he hasn't been able to get to it yet, but he's very eager to. And phone, 5%, and other 94.5%. He has contest on ARL SSB, ARL DG, and ARL Field A. His favorite contests are ARL 10 meters and ARL SSB. He's on the air every day, I can testify. Yeah, everybody here in the room has seen him very active. So normally we will tell Aaron to step out of the room while we vote, but it's very difficult to do that here. So Aaron, if you are online, just close your ears and we'll vote for him. Everybody in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Anybody against? Nothing heard, so welcome your ears. Welcome to the club. Next one, coming from the same LARC Discord, is Garrett Bissett Mortensen, W6ILO. He's a fairly new ham. He has a general license class, sponsored by the same three people, Don, W2DON, myself, K6KM, and Gary, and A60, QTH Livermore. He has an FT710 and an FTX1 in an NFET halfway on his backyard, and he's putting a new antenna every week. He's 50% SSB and 50% other, also trying to get into CW right now. He just did the ARRL digital past weekend, and he got bitten by the contest bug. So he has to be, he has to join the club. And Garrett, if you're online, do us a favor and close your ears while we vote. Anybody in favor, say hi. Aye. Anybody against? Nothing heard? Now, Garrett, you can open your ears again. Welcome to the club. So, these two gentlemen will be rewarded with a very welcome new member by our secretary in A60. So, general stuff from our meeting, annual contribution, aka dues collection is coming up. So K6MM is going to put our thermometer goal up on our website, and you will be notified. Our mentoring program that is underway, it was an idea from Rick and N6XI, he's here. He volunteered his shack and his time for new members, as long as there is good matching. Jim, K9YC, pretty soon after that, when he found that, he also volunteered his shack, so we have already some traction. And we also have a pairing. I'm happy to say that Rick is working actively with John N6YU, and is working pretty well. So if anybody else wants to join the cause, just let me know, I'll put you on the list. Club needs, we need to replace Skip, K6DGW as jack editor. July will be the last jack in our history, unless we find somebody that wants to take the work of doing the jack every month. It's a warning, the last warning. Anybody interested in working on a new website, also please talk to me. And we desperately need audio-video operators for in-person meetings. Thank you, Gary, for taking over this time. An applause for Gary. Gary, this is the only thing you get, an applause. Like somebody said, it's a thankless job, so thank you. The Board of Directors has approved the budget for next year. It's a quite balanced budget, so pretty similar to last year. So it's there for everybody to see. These slides will be available offline too if you want to look at them more carefully. And the upcoming contests, the big ones from our KB internal contest is Yaru HF World Championship, WRTC. July 11th. And then we have the first two NAQPs for summer, RETI July 18th and CW August 1st. Upcoming meetings? Yes. Yes. No, I did not. July? Oh, next weekend. Next weekend is All Asia CW. All Asia CW next weekend. Thank you, Chris. July, we're having Gary, an A60, one of his multiple hats, secretary, audio video, awards manager, and presenter, getting the most from NCCC. Then in August, we'll have the CQP preview with Dean and 60E. September, we have our NCCC family picnic at Ship Park. I'm glad to announce that we will have it. In October, the WRTC experience with Bob, that's preliminary, but it's a placeholder. All these are in-person meetings. Everybody asks for in-person meetings, so we want to see people coming to the in-person meetings. Oops. Not moving. Can you move it for me, please? Maybe get out and come back in. So you're ready for the presentation now? You're ready for starting the presentation? Yeah. There it is. So the highlight for this afternoon is Bob talking about propagation. Bob Cox, K3EST. Bob started a few years ago in Ham Brady as a Cub Scout. He progressed all the way to director of CQ Worldwide for nothing but 35 years. He received the Contest Hall of Fame award in 1996. He achieved something unique. Waga and Waku from the Japan Amateur Radio League. I don't know how many people have done that, one or two, I think, in the whole US, right? And he's also in the management team of IOTA. Bob has done it all, knows everybody, and everybody knows him. So with that, take it away, Bob.
I need the clicker if I can. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to talk this little program today. And no, I'm completely talking to the already converted. I know that you all know a lot about propagation, and I know that this very esoteric group here. So my little talk is about perhaps giving you a few little tidbits that maybe you refresh your memory or learn something new. So let me begin. First of all, like I say, I looked at many sites. I'm not a propagation expert, so I looked at many sites to try to understand what was going on with the ionosphere. The process is almost, in cases, was not clear to myself at all. It involved a lot of math and a lot of other stuff that was involved. So here I went to Gunner for many sites. I just settled down to a sort of understandable English. Propagation that affects your QSOs, of course, very greatly simplified. Bear in mind that the SFI, your antenna system, your location, all will influence the following discussion. A little history of a little outline of what I'm going to talk about, a little history, ionospheric basics, and a little bit more about ionospheric basics in cycle 25, and then four different types of propagation, which you all have encountered somewhere or another. And then finally, propagation you remember. And finally, an appendix, which I won't talk about, which expands upon what I'm going to talk about. Let's see, back where we are. So a little history, let's go back to 1902 when Oliver Heaviside first discovered that there was something up there that would reflect radio signals, EMR, and He was dubbed the Kenley heaviside layer. It's a layer of ionized gas occurring at that height, as you can see. They theorized this layer to explain how Marconi's 1901 radio signal actually traveled around the curve of the Earth. So essentially, it became known as the E layer. By the way, just to say a little bit more about Heaviside, it would be worth your effort to look up his history, because everybody's familiar with Maxwell's equations. There were 4 of them, if you remember. Those were all derived by Heaviside. He was the one who actually converted Maxwell's 20 equations into the 4 which everybody knows today. So Heaviside was no small object. He didn't really understand anything about Maxwell's equations, so he taught himself all about it himself. He said there were beautiful equations, and he made them into the 4 equations we see today. So a little history. In 1924, the existence of ionosphere was conclusively discovered by Alberton and Barnett. He won a Nobel Prize for that eventually. 1925, American scientists discovered there were confirmed the different layers to the ionosphere. In 1927, Alberton performed and discovered there was an F layer. However, remember that it was actually 1902 that Oliver Heaviside and Kenley discovered that there was something to bounce off radio signals. So here's the history. Here's the Heaviside layer. You can see it located there. And included the means by which radio signals could be transmitted around the curvature of the Earth. So Heaviside layer is referred to in the musical Cats. Everybody's seen the musical Cats probably in some time in their life, where Grisabella ends up being sent to the Heaviside layer. It's actually Alfred Lloyd Webber took the idea from T.S. Eliot, where Eliot wrote up to the Heaviside layer. And this layer was well known to Eliot at the time because it explained why the Marconi was able to conduct his transcontinental experiment. So here's a little bit about more ionospheric basics. There are several layers you will know. D, E, F1, and F2, as you can see in this image. Each layer has ionizable gas, and the sun, as you well know, is a controlling mechanism to the activation of the ionosphere. So what happens to radio waves as they pass through the ionosphere? Radio waves hit free electrons in the ionosphere cause them to vibrate and re-radiate photons back at the same frequency, refracting the signal back to the Earth. In the lifetime, this is something I didn't have any idea about, the lifetime of free electrons differs in various layers. As you can see, for example, the D layer, free electrons caused by the sun's ionization of the area last less than a second. While in the F2 layer, they last 20 minutes. And you'll see in a few minutes why that's true. So daylight, free electrons, the sun, you can see in this picture here. Let's see if I never skipped a picture. No, did I skip a picture? Okay, how does it affect propagation? Here you can see an example in this image of the ionosphere. And if those yellow things are the sun rays hitting the ionosphere, and if you look carefully, you can see that the F2 layer has very few blue dots. Those are molecules of gas up in this area. While if you look at the D layer, it has a lot. And it makes sense, because if you think about gases, the density of gases in the ionosphere, the closer you are to Earth, the denser it will be, the further out it will be sparser. So what affects radio propagation is the density of free electrons in the various layers of the ionosphere. And depending on the free electron density and the radio frequency, the waves are bent or refracted back to Earth and pass through the ionosphere to outer space. Here's a diagram showing how it works, so to speak. When radio waves pass through the ionosphere, radio waves hitting the free electrons in the ionosphere cause them to vibrate and re-radiate photons back at the same frequency back to Earth. Lifetime, as I just mentioned, is right there. If I turn this, there we are. Did I skip something? I forget. No, that's good. I'm having a little trouble with this picture, so please forgive me. The sun's radiation, as you can see, hits the various layers of the ionosphere, and this is daylight free electrons. In the D layer, there are lots of neutral gases, and the amount of ions that are created are small because you can see that the sun's radiation doesn't proceed all the way down to the Earth, basically. It's less and less and less and less as it goes down. And essentially, the gases in the F2 layer are ionized remarkably well, and as you just mentioned, they last about 20 minutes each free electron. But if you go down to the D layer, they last a few seconds. This is very important. When radiation from the sun hits the ionosphere, the molecules in each layer ionize, and free electrons are positive charges. This happens during daylight hours, of course, when the sun is shining. Hello, like this? Oh, this is like 10 meters, you know, so. Yeah. This was like W6. This is W1. So nighttime and free electrons. Without solar radiation, the free electrons recombine with their host molecules, and the recombination causes the free electron density to go down. This forces the MUF to go down, which by total darkness, 10 meters essentially goes completely dead, as you well know, or 15 slightly after that. So the free electron density goes down rapidly in the D layer. Why? Because there's so many molecules that they can combine with, free electrons. So the many parent molecules in the D layer for the free electrons to combine with. This is not so in the F2 layer because there are far fewer parent molecules because they're much sparser gas amount, so they don't combine very rapidly, and they sometimes never really completely recombine with their parent molecule. She knows what she's doing. So at night, the D layer is complete. At night, the D layer is completely gone. The reason is because all the parent molecules have combined with the free electrons, because there were so many parent molecules, it completely disappears. So the diurnal and seasonal changes in the ionosphere, as you can see on that image on the left. During the summer, the F2 is very high. During the winter, it's lower. And the reason for that is because in the summer, there's heat. Just the normal heat causes the gases to rise up further. And during the winter, it's colder, so they go down and become denser. And at night, the only thing that's left all through the year is the F layer and the E layer. And the F layer, realistically, is just really the F2 layer continuing all night, basically. Let's see if I can get this to change again. So the seasonal change, the temperature will be lower in the winter, which causes denser gases in the lower levels, like in the D layer, which means there's a smaller one-hop distance for your signal. During the summer, long daylight hours in the summer cause the F2 layer to increase in height by the heating of the molecules, which are now much further apart. And because of that, the F2 layer persists during summer nights because of reduced electron recombination rates, thus maintaining electron density long after the sun is set. Now, you probably saw that in the WPX contest, for example, on CW. It was open all night to JA, for example. That's why. So, what does this mean for you making QSOs? Well, the angle of incidence of your signal, in other words, the angle of your transmission, whether it's a low or high angle, depends on how it goes through the ionosphere. It will hit either more or less free electrons. If it's a low angle, the lower angle will allow the radio wave to travel obliquely through a longer distance of ionized layers of ionosphere, causing the signal to become in contact with many, many more free electrons. Well, the total number of free electrons integrated over your entire low-angle path may be higher. Sometimes the F2 density is so sparse the MUF actually drops, and so you actually can't take advantage of the fact of that effect that is going through at a oblique angle. Also bear in mind that each half of your signal goes, during the day, goes up through the D layer and down through the D layer. Each skip of your hop of your signal goes through the D layer during the day. So the refraction of your signal, how does it refract? The passing of the radio waves forces the free electrons in the ionosphere to vibrate at the same frequency as the wave. Because the wave enters at an angle, the free electrons pushes the wave progressively sideways and downward. And I was thinking about this, what's the best way for you to sort of visualize this in the ionosphere? Just think about you're seeing something in the water, like a straw going through like here, for example. The refraction of the light coming into the water refracts just like your radio waves, because they're photons, and causes the actual straw to appear at a different angle. It actually refracts it. So that's a way of viewing it differently. Of course, radio waves and lighter frequencies are not similar, so that doesn't actually explain what happens in terms of wavelength, but it does help you to sort of conceptualize what it looks like when your signal refracts in the ionosphere. So, wait a minute. Why is 28 megahertz so poor in the summer? And it's been that way ever since I've been contesting. There's intense D-layer absorption because the increased number of sun, longer day, causes the D-layer to become ionized for a much longer period of time. This makes the 28 megahertz signal become slightly absorbed, but if it makes it through the D-layer, it goes up to the F2 layer. But if you recall, the F2 layer now is heated up, so that it's now raised up to a higher level and becomes much sparser in terms of its parent molecules. And because of that, the smaller frequency, 28 megahertz, with a smaller wavelength, doesn't encounter as many free electrons. And because of that, it passes into Mars or someplace where there's nobody to work. And we've all experienced that. For example, if you just look at the results at N6RO in the WPX sideband contest, on 10 meters I had 1,700 contacts in late March. In late May, 340. This explains why. Essentially, all summer, 10 meters is not good. It sort of returns in late September, basically. Now, why the F2 layer, and they look at 20 meters in the summer, which is sort of the opposite of 10 meters. The only to the far east, for example, just for the JA, 14 megahertz, we can see on the graph on the slide, the next slide. This is due to the lingering of the F2 layer after sunset, because remember, it's much higher because it's hotter, and there's molecules, the ferrant molecules are spread out much further, so it becomes much sparser. So the free electrons have much longer lives before they combine with their parent molecules. Because of that, the F2 layer never really the free electrons never go to zero, basically, and the F2 layer lingers after sunset, and actually lingers all night during the summer. And this next slide shows you a good example of that. This was the last JA worked on 14 megahertz at N6RO, and those months equal contests on the bottom, the x-axis. Those are different contests during the year. You can see the last JA was worked in May, for example, at 1400 Zulu. The one was open all night, the JA. But if you look at the other months, you can see that the peak occurs in the summer, and like we just explained why, and it tails off on either end. So the JA, for example, that you last work on 20 meters in February is about 11 o'clock at night, something like that, 10 o'clock, 11 at night. While in May, it's all night, JAs, all night. And this is the reason for that, why that happens. Now, if you look at here's another example of looking at 40 meters. This is also N6RO. What is the first JA you can work on 40 meters? at N6RO, for example, and you can see the months, and what's controlling this is Japan sunset. Obviously, you can't work 40 meters at noon in Japan easily. So basically what you're seeing here is the first JA worked at various months, and you notice that the first JA was worked earliest at, like when it's dark in the wintertime, and when it's smallest in the summertime. This is all because of the sunrise and sunset in Japan, for example. So here's cycle 25, for example, and I just took this little image from the internet. You can see where we are. You can sort of see that. And I want to show you the next slide, which shows you more of a convincing idea that 25 actually is decreasing. Here I've operated 10-meter contests, and I look back at all the data, and these are the various cycles. Each one of those peaks is a different cycle of the sunspot cycle. The one on the far right is the present cycle. The numbers indicate the actual number of cues made by every category, the maximum number of cues made by every category in the 10-meter contest added together. If you look at that, you can see that it's far right, that it's sort of going down, which means that probably this year in the 10-meter contest, the next number down will be even lower than that, for example. So this is another convincing indication that the solar cycle is actually declining, which we all don't want it to happen, but we have no control over that. So next I want to talk about 4 types of propagation, which you've all encountered, I'm sure. Sporadic E, long path, chordal hop, gray line, terminator, and skewed path. I think everybody experienced the 6-meter sporadic E yesterday and a couple days ago. Was pretty interesting, wasn't it? With all over, even over to Europe. All right, sporadic E propagation is probably the most interesting form of signal enhancement for anyone interested in 28 megahertz or above. As its name suggests, is an unpredictable event, sporadic E. So activity peaks in the summer solstice and a smaller peak in the winter solstice. There seems to be no correlation between sporadic E and the sunset cycle. Are you doing something? Okay, that's good. That's good. Sporadic E is, let's look at 10 meters on sporadic E because that's the one I'm interested in myself. The next slide shows you 14, I'm not turning anything. The 14, so it's 14 years of 10-meter contest evening QSO history. Although the next slide contains a lot of data, you can look at it later. Here is the summary. Sporadic E is not predictable. 2 or more events can occur in the same evening. 2 evenings with good sporadic E is pretty rare. The sole secret to sporadic E is you have to be alert. You have to be on the ball to try to see what's going on. Now, the next slide, this one here, looks, there's an enormous amount of data here. This is from my log. This is from my log on the 10-meter contest. I've operated every 10-meter contest since it began. And I kept track of sporadic E openings every night. Okay? So this is data from sporadic E openings during the 10-meter contest in the evening. So in the evening, during the day you can't tell because you got openings all the time, basically. But if you look carefully at this, you can see that sporadic E is unpredictable. Some day there's nothing, some day there's something, some day there's a lot. For example, if you look at 2019, just for the heck of it, you'll see that, first of all, it started really slow, it worked like that. Then about, I can't read it, 0400, 0200, something like that, the band opened completely wide across the United States. In 2019, I worked a total of 319 contacts the whole 40 hours. Sporadic E was 270 of those on Friday night. If you didn't operate Friday night, you should have just watched television or something. because essentially there was nothing else after that. But you can look at this at your free time and look at that. The next type of propagation is chordal Hopf propagation. This is ionospheric propagation occurring without the Hopf hitting the Earth. Essentially, it's going around and hitting the ionosphere. So it travels with multiple refractions within the ionosphere before it returns to Earth. This propagation mode is called the chordal Hopf propagation. And chordal Hopf propagation is a propagation mode involving daylight F2 layer and the nighttime F1F layer. Are you changing it, Gary, or what? Okay. Nothing's happening. Okay. So how does it work? Chordal Hopf propagation occurs when the daylight ionosphere maintains a stronger refractive, steeper refraction of your signal. So the signal goes up, refracted down, hits the Earth, goes up, like normally you would think it does. But when it hits the nighttime part of the ionosphere, in some cases, it goes up, and the ionosphere doesn't create a steep refraction. It creates a very small refraction. And this shallow refraction is not enough to send it to Earth. It bounces off the ionosphere again, like this, around the Earth. This is very interesting, and you can see in this next slide what I'm talking about. There's, on the left is the example. There's California on the far right, as you can see. And here's a little secret I'll tell you about how to work Zone 29 in the CQWW contest. Everybody sort of beams when they hear VK6, for example. They beam their antenna to VK6. Makes sense. But that's not what you want to do. You want to move your signal, you want to move your antenna so it hits sort of like a CM8, okay? So you're now beaming into the darkness. So your first signal hits the ground, goes up, hits the dark area where it hits chordal path all the way across over to VK6. And if you notice, VK6 is in light, so now it's no longer supported by ionosphere, it goes down to the Earth again, and the VK6 is in your log. Essentially, you can't lose this because every time you're really much louder than the East Coast and the West Coast. So this is a little secret that you should bear in mind when you're trying to work Zone 29, especially on 20 meters. You know, as I explained it there a little bit. So what about gray line propagation? Gray line propagation is a term that separates night from day. And it's essentially the terminator propagation. Essentially, it goes around. You can see two examples of the terminator there. The top one is the equinox, and the bottom is the solstice. Very different, aren't they? They're very different. So they basically are showing you different types of what's possible gray line-wise. In radio terms, the radio terminator is not the same as the visual one. There's no good to look for gray line DX exactly after visual sunset because remember the sun's way up here in a shining ionosphere much higher than you can see. So it actually illuminates the ionosphere of the D and E and F layer so that their sunset is much different than what you can see visually, for example. How does it work? The day end of the path has been illuminated all day. The night end of the path has been in darkness all night. As the terminator approaches the night end of the path, the F region of the sun at sunrise, the sun illuminates the ionosphere and the MUF rises. So the F layer becomes ionized and the MUF rises. This MUF is still high on the sunset part of the path. So the MUF on the sunrise and sunset part of the path are both still relatively high. And here, continuing on with this, the D region has not yet formed on the sunrise part of the circuit, and it's rapidly dissipating on the sunset side. This results in a low absorption along the whole terminator. The net result is a good time of period, where your stations can communicate across the gray line zone. So 40 meters is the premier gray line band, as you all well know. In the morning, if you turn your beam, say, to work Europe, but say at 220 degrees, you can work the gray line all the way around the Earth and hit Europe. and work European. It lasts maybe, I don't know, half an hour to an hour, 2 hours, depending on what the actual conditions are like. Now here's an example of a gray line Q-cell I made. Before the contest, I set up a sked with a couple of the expedition was going to 4S7, which if you know what 4S7 is, it's a tough place to work even anyway, right? And essentially, I was looking for it on 40 meters because I was single band 40. So I wrote them a letter. I said, please make a schedule with me at this time. And I beamed at 150 degrees, which is along the evening terminator. And that goes right to Sri Lanka, if you actually looked at it there. And then actually the station 47AAYG, I couldn't believe it. I was calling CQ, working whatever I was working. All of a sudden 47AYG called me. He was 20 over 9 on the gray line. 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, totally gone. Like this. That's how fast it was. So if you're interested in the gray line, it's a wonderful way to work places that are really tough. Just as an aside from that, I was lucky enough to operate from A61HA long ago, and one of my fellow operators was K1ZM, who was a 160 expert, as you probably well know. He set up a 160 biggest 160 antenna. He said, Bob, come over and listen to this. So I listened to this, and we were listening to the gray line. The gray line was going from Dubai all the way through Arizona, like this. So he got on 160. He called CQ. An Arizona guy called him. This is from A6. I couldn't believe it. So he says, stay here a minute. So I stayed longer. Determined as the sunlight, as it went up to the United States, the last Q was in Washington State. So it went right through California, all the way up to Washington State. So the answer is, if you want to work someplace like A6, find somebody who knows what they're doing. Because just the average person won't be able to do it. But if you know somebody, it's possible, as you can see. So here's the next type of propagation. It's called the skewed path. During a solar event, which has recently been more often than we wanted, essentially, you've noticed that when you point your beam to Europe, there's nothing there. Actually, in my experience, when I put my beam to Europe during one of these events, a solar event, the radio actually becomes completely, the noise floor goes away completely. Essentially, you hear nothing. Then you turn your beam from, say, 30 degrees down to 70 or 80 degrees, all of a sudden the band noise comes back. And my God, well, there's an Italy station. There's a French station. You put it back to the main direction, nothing. You go back to the 60, 70, 80 degrees, something. And the reason for that is because it's at the equator, in this next picture you can see, there's an equatorial enhancement. There's two, which happen all the time. There's two nodes on either side of the equator, and what you're doing is you're hitting one of these nodes at, say, 70 degrees or something like that. The signal is bouncing off of that, going up to the F2 ionization area, and going back to Europe. So in other words, you can go all the way from there, all the way to the other place, to Europe, for example. You can do the same thing with JA by beaming at 240 degrees, for example. I hope you found this little discussion of propagation so far semi-interesting. And now finally I want to talk about what makes propagation really interesting. Things that are not, you don't account for them. You can't explain them. How did that happen? How did I do that? Why is that happening? Those are the things you actually remember. So if you look, for example, here's two examples I remember specifically. Here's two examples of something which is completely unexpected. Last year in the WPX contest, 2025, I was on 10 meters at N6RO. You work in JAs and they go out, and then you work VKs, and eventually here's something, they sort of go out. And it was about 9 o'clock at night, and I called CQ, and guess who called me? 4Z5ML on 10 meters. And I said, wow, this isn't great. How could this possibly be? So the next day, I did the same thing, turning the beam at, say, 220 degrees, 210 degrees, and beamed the same direction. And I worked 9A1A, LZ4TX, and YT1X. And 9A1A actually made a comment on 3830 saying, I can't believe it. I worked NR60 at unbelievable time. And you can look at there, and you can see I put the terminator up there. You can see it really is not easily explainable how that happened. It looks like the terminator's beyond the west coast, and I'm maybe going down that, but on the other side is nowhere near where the Europeans were. Essentially, it had to hit the F2 layer in a different area and go into work those stations. So this is one example of something I remember, and I'm sure you have your own examples of things you remember in a similar way. Finally, here's another anecdote, which is I've read many places in many propagation books, especially by N4XX and his group, essentially saying there's no such thing as one-way skip. Well, I can say that there is one-way skip. I was on 10 meters, not working in JAs at all. I put the beam, I had two beams. I had a beam at 305 and 240 degrees, beaming the same at the time, hoping to catch that skip off the enhancement at the equator, plus hoping the JA might hear me on a regular path. So I'm beaming, calling CQ, nothing. A VK called me. He said, Bob, you have a huge pileup of JAs calling you. I said, really? I can't hear anything. There was nothing, not a peep, nothing. And finally, he told me J6GCE is calling me. If you know Nobu, he basically has a huge station like N6RO, for example. Nothing. There was nothing heard. So what this told me is essentially my signal was making it to JA on the hops, but their signal, remember that every hop of everything that you're making with your various frequencies, every hop has to support your frequency. So in other words, if you're going like this over to Japan, I made it that way, but when they were coming back to me, some part of the ionosphere didn't support the 28 megahertz hop, and there was nothing there. So this was, to me, was convincing proof that one-way skip exists. Essentially that. So I put a list of useful propagation tools for you to look at, useful during the contest, basically, and useful information that are available anytime for help you with propagation. The ones above in the propagation tools, everybody's familiar with that. You can look at that and try to figure out what's best for yourself. So thank you very much for this nice little talk. I hope you will look at the appendix, which I attached, which is another 25 pages, which helps to elaborate on what I just mentioned. So thank you very much. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. What was that? It's called VOCAP. Oh, VOCAP. I find the VOCAP is basically just a suggestion. It basically just tells me what, for example, if you look at VOCAP for the All Asian contest this coming weekend, JA's all night on 15 and 10, on 20, for example. That may or may not happen. So it doesn't really tell you exactly what might happen in terms of your own personal experience. So there's two choices for the VOCAP, the basic and the extreme antenna. So if you put it on the basic, you can see what a lot of people have, tri-band or something like that. But I put it on the extreme one, which Ken has big antennas, so I put it on that. And essentially, still, it's only a suggestion. And at least I find myself working in stations beyond what VOCAP suggests. But that's just how it depends on your station. The big thing about where you can work something is where you're located. You're high up in a mountain, or you're in a good mow area on the ground. All those things mean a lot in terms of how you get out. Okay? Well, thank you. See you in the elevation.
Thank you, Bob. Any last-minute comments for NCCC or Motherlode? Otherwise, anybody motion for dismiss? Ed, second. Gary? Okay, everybody, dismiss say hey. Okay, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much, everybody online. Thank you, Bob, again. And thanks, Gary, for setting all this stuff up.